welcome everybody to another edition of Critical Conversations. The show brought to you on 16 October 2020, and let us make sure that all is well. Looks like it is. Looks like we got sound and video and all of that. Hey, everybody. You know, I just don't get to use this enough, and I wanted to intro the show.
Hi, everybody. I had to sort of lighten the mood a little bit because I have been involved in deep, troubling study today. And so I thought I would just start the show a little lighter than usual. All right.
We'll bring that back to Chris's voice now. Anyway, it's been fun. There has been some, you know, when you study coercive control, then you have to study how people abuse each other. Mm-hmm. Because coercive control, by definition, is intimidation, isolation, control. It's, you know, these are bad things. We're looking at this in a bad context. And some of the examples that we get and some of the information that we get today was sort of Domestic Violence Day. We covered a lot of territory about how people are awful to each other in relationships, intimate partner violence, this sort of thing. I mean, there are a lot of expressions out there and phrases and things to describe the toxicity that can happen between people when things go bad, or things were bad to begin with, but it didn't look like that, mm-hmm. and then it goes in a really negative direction. You know, even interpersonal or intimate terrorism. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can throw around with this, but at the end of the day, we're talking about people hurting other people, mm-hmm. Who are in situations where they seem to or should care about one another, and yet, you know, here's this horrible stuff happening. And all of the techniques and you know, as I've been saying for years, I'm getting a lot of, you know, I'm really enjoying the learning process and verifying things I've said or learned about, even if I didn't have a label for it, but also learning new things and new swaths of area where I have not been particularly, you know, I just haven't gone in that direction particularly. Coercive control is a subject that covers a lot of territory. From intimate partner violence all the way through to, you know, terrorism and radicalization and governments and, you know, the media. I mean, there's a lot of ways this manifests or you know, shows up in our world. Mm-hmm. So domestic violence hasn't been my specialty or thing that I've been looking into over all these years talking about this. So getting some of the examples of what husbands do to wives, what wives have done to husbands, laws about this on the books in the UK. We're studying this and looking into how effective they are, how useful they are, how they are being used. There is a coercive control law there since 2015.
Do they compare any of their laws to other countries?
No, because this one, I mean, France. Okay. France has a law. I think it's called the Abu Card law, which of course I remember because of Star Trek, even though it has nothing to do with Star Trek.
Nothing to do with Jean-Luc.
And that one, you know, France has definitely had an anti-sect. That's what they call them, sects or cults, right? They've definitely, you know, not been friendly towards certain groups and cults. And that itself can go overboard a bit, as we've seen in Russia, where you start banning people, throwing them in jail, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I certainly want criminals prosecuted, don't get me wrong, but belief should never be a crime. And if you start thought policing people, there's only one place that goes, and it's very, very dark. So we don't want any of that. But we do want sensible regulations. And this coercive control law is interesting because, like we went over last week, you know, you have to show a continuing pattern of behavior, which is correct. Coercive control shouldn't be based or judged off of a one bad situation or conversation or event. You know, everybody can get stressed, can freak out, can act inappropriately, can do bad stuff. And it's not a past to say people do that. They should be punished accordingly. But coercive control is, by definition, it's a pattern behavior, and it's intentional behavior. And these are important things to understand about it. So anyway, that's what's been happening with me and study and stuff. So it's been kind of a busy time. Holy cow, have things been wild. So this is our new night for the show.
Right.
We, by the way, this is my beautiful wife, Melissa.
Hello.
And I'm going on at a mad rate about about my schooling, because I saw some questions popping up about it. But she's actually got some wonderful stuff to talk about tonight on voting. So first off, let's hit a few bases, check a few boxes. Our number, 984-214-4154. And I see we do have a call in the queue, which is great. So we will get to that in just a moment. Looks like it's coming in from Texas. And but first we must there he is. There's our 7. It's hashtag 7 the Wonder Cat. If you ever want to talk about 7 on social media, that is the way to do it. 7 is called 7. We have to repeat this every now and again. 7 is named 7 because
there's a little white mark on his right hind leg that looks like the number 7. And that's how he ended up with that name. He was marked from birth.
There you go. So our little bundle of joy. Okay, and I wanted to do this little bit because I thought this was so nice. A viewer sent us this actually. Yeah. This is a Star Wars themed Christmas ornament. You'd hang this off a Christmas tree. It's Princess Leia with Chewbacca. And she also sent me a very nice donation to help paying for my education. That was kind of awesome. Yeah. So that was viewer Delma out there. And I don't know if you're watching this live tonight or you'll be catching this on pickup afterwards. But thank you very much for that. I really, really appreciated it. All right, guys. So let's see here. Let us see right away. Let's take this call. Okay. And then we will get into the deeper topic of conversation this evening, voting. We have a whole little thing on that, and looking forward to talking about it. But let's see what we have here. Hello, Texas. You're on.
Xenu for Trump. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. That's the spirit. What's up?
What's up, Chris? What's up, Melissa?
Hello.
How are you this fine Friday evening?
Oh, I'm good. But talking about voting, I got an interesting conversation I had with my mom last week.
Pray tell.
That people might like to hear.
Yeah.
You heard all this stuff on the news about, mail-in ballots, how, they're going to try to steal the election with mail-in ballots, whatnot. But I called my mom last week and I was talking about, see, now my cat's getting all crazy. It wants outside. Okay, but anyway, no, we were, I don't know if you can hear it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can hear him. Yeah,
Let me out.
But we were talking about mail-in ballots, and she told me, she goes, I was a Democrat since 18. Mm-hmm. She goes, I just changed my party affiliation this year, but my dad, he hasn't, and on his registration it shows him still a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom told me he's been receiving multiple ballots, mail-in ballots in the mail, mail-in ballots in the mail.
Really?
And she has not received one. Yes, and she has not received one.
Now, that is very interesting as an anecdote. That's very, very interesting. Would he be receiving multiple ballots for being, are these all under the same name? Has he somehow registered under different names?
No, he's the same name. She said he's gotten at least 3 mail-in ballots.
Wow, that is very interesting. And that's in Texas?
No. They live in Florida.
Oh, Florida. Okay. And
but
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh,
I was like, it's kind of weird that my mom changed Republican, and he's still a Democrat. She never received any, but he did.
No, I
So
definitely agree. It's weird. Yeah, that is weird. Wow, I wonder why that would be, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to pull the string on that,
I mean, maybe that is a clue that they are trying to cheat.
Well, I'm not going to take one anecdote as proof of anything, right? I will say either way, but I've been down this, we're going to talk about some of this stuff. I'm not saying, I can't obviously sit here and say, well, that's not what it is, right? It very clearly could be some fraudulent activity. On the other hand, it could be a mistake. How many times do we get duplicate, or you hear about mistakes being made where people get duplicate checks sometimes from Social Security or Medicaid, Medicare, et cetera. They get duplicate forms, registration stuff. I mean, it happens. So I can't take a one-off as as proof of anything, but it's weird. I definitely agree with you.
I'm gonna respond. I see Scientology in the chat, and they said you can only use one, right?
Yeah.
No. Here's the thing: you can sign different names.
Yeah, but don't mail in.
Check the name and the signature.
But the mail-in ballots, I happen to bring a prop this evening, and I'll show it here on screen. This is our mail-in ballots. I've got mine filled out here, and it's got my name right on the outside of it that I have to sign. Now,
if you don't mind me asking, are you a Democrat?
I am registered independent this year. I was registered Democrat up until this year, and I've been voting in Denver for 5 years. So every year, this is how it's been here in Colorado. We're not Florida. Every state is different in terms of how they administer their balloting, but I believe having the name printed on the ballot on the outside of the envelope there and then signing underneath is fairly common.
What were you about to say? What were you about to say about signing something? You was about to say something about
that when you sign it, you have your name printed there. So I could sign it with whatever name I wanted, but my name is right there.
Yeah, and in Colorado, whatever you sign on your driver's license or your state ID, they match when they get your ballot. They match those together to make sure they're similar.
Right. People don't generally appreciate the level of objective third-party oversight of state and local elections where they are watching for duplicates exactly as you're suggesting so that they can stop that and nip it in the bud, right? And track and find voter fraud. So, it's not a wide open system where you just send in as many ballots as you want and nobody's watching. I did want to say that much.
Yeah, and the answer to Mamak, yes, you have to register with one sort of party or another to vote.
Yeah.
To register to vote.
Yep, that's right.
At least in the primaries.
I think, at least in the primaries, I think you do here in Colorado as well.
In Colorado, you can be an independent, but you can only vote in one or the other. You can only vote either in the Republican or the Democrat. You can't vote in both.
Well, yeah. That makes sense. In the primaries. Sure.
Can't cheat that way.
Which I don't think it's right that you have to choose one side or the other. I don't think that's right.
No, it's mostly done for census demographics purposes, more and predictive purposes than it is to try to limit your vote. I mean, I got a ballot. I could have voted straight Republican down the ballot, even though I'm registered independent, I'm registered Democrat. That doesn't alter or force my vote in any way. It's really just sort of a demographics thing.
Well, it's weird in Texas. I haven't even received a mail-in ballot.
Huh.
Oh.
I had to go out and vote the other day, but not my ex-wife too. They've never received a mail-in ballot, so maybe they're not even doing that in Texas. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Some places you have to register to get mail-in ballots and stuff like that too.
Right. Plus, I think wasn't it Texas that was trying to limit the drop-off voting to one location per county?
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I think I read about that a couple days ago. I think it was Texas.
Yeah,
and
sure it was Texas.
This was actually stopped at the judge. I think a judge had to put a stop on it because it seemed a bit of a shady.
What What would be the
attempt
purpose of that thing?
to make it harder to vote, right? Which we'll go over in more detail here this evening. Melissa's got some stuff
Okay.
prepared on that.
Okay.
But briefly, just to answer your question, is if you can make it harder for people to vote, especially, if you can sort of you don't take the right away from people, you just
Right.
make it logistically so difficult to make it happen that they can't afford to go vote. And that itself can be a form of voter fraud or voter intimidation or whatever, So.
But who would that benefit, though?
Well, it depends on who's doing it and why,
Yeah.
right? Because if they want to limit, let's say you have counties that are, that routinely come in for one party or another. The opposite party is going to be watching those counties like a hawk. And if there's some way they can prevent voters from that area from getting to the ballot box, then they have been shown in the past to do that. Not always, of course, and not equally and all of that. There's all kinds of breakdowns you can do on this, but does this kind of thing happen? Absolutely. Yes, it does.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
that's about
Well,
all that I had to
thanks.
say.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no, thanks for calling in. I know I was sort of, dropping a little bit of rain on your conjecture there. I didn't mean to say that, it's not fraudulent activity. All I'm suggesting
no.
is,
I mean,
we don't know.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm not sure what it is. It just seems kind of suspicious,
Mhm.
It definitely does. Yeah, I would. If you can find out, if you can pull the string on that somehow, contact who's sending out these ballots and find out what the hell. Via your parents, I suppose. Let us know. I'd be interested.
Yeah.
How would you find out who sent them?
Oh, it's going to be in the information. It usually comes from the Office of Clerk and Recorder here in Denver. I mean, there's an official person in local government who does this work. It's not hard to find.
Interesting. You know what? I'm going to text her right now and ask her, and if I get an answer, I'll put it in chat.
Okay.
Great.
I'm under Beesmith. I'm under Beesmith Films, so just look for Beesmith. But yeah, I'm going to find that out right now.
Awesome. All right, man. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah.
All right, Chris. All right, Melissa.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'll see y'all later.
All right, and we have another call.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so let's see what we got here. Marianne, I believe. Let's see.
Yeah.
Hey, Marianne,
Yes,
you're on.
Well, I thank you for your show. I have kind of an explanation for that gentleman in Florida.
Oh.
His mother may be getting applications, not ballots, but they look
Oh.
very similar, and they're an application to get a mail-in ballot. And several groups are sending them out,
Mm.
but they are not ballots.
Okay.
It's just if you open them up and fill them out, it's just an application to get a ballot, but it's not from an official group. I
Interesting.
mean, it's not from official, the Board of Elections.
Right. It's not official county.
It's just like either Republicans or Democrats, or maybe, I don't know, just somebody
Yeah. Some
that's just sending out applications for mail-in ballot.
Well, thank you for that input.
That may be
I hadn't
it.
thut of that. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
All right. Did you
Okay.
have anything?
All right.
Do you have
Well,
any?
thank you for your show.
Well, you're very welcome, and good evening. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
All right. Somebody asked in the chat about what I think of or what we think of preferential voting. And I'm just looking that up because I actually am not familiar. And apparently there's a bunch of different things that are referred to as preferential voting. There's ranked voting, proportional voting methods. Anyway, maybe clarify that question a little bit so we can answer it. I'd like to answer your question, but I want to answer the one you're asking. And okay, so yeah, exactly. You guys are tracking here in the comments. All right, so let us talk about voting. You have some things to say about this, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, well, I have some specific groups I want to talk about. So here we go. So when we think of obstacles to voting and what might happen at the polls this year, there are many that may not cross our minds. Sure, there are concerns about mail-in voting and how it may be tampered with. Armed militias are threatening to stand guard at the polls. Trump may not leave graciously if he loses, and more. However, there are 3 groups of people we may not be taking into consideration when it comes to voting and their obstacles to that right. These groups are felons, the homeless, and those deemed mentally incompetent, all of whom face restrictions and struggles when it comes to exercising their right to vote. Sometimes they lose it completely. And my point is just, when is that okay and when is that not okay, you know? So, I feel it is important to pay attention to what is happening to those not so well off in our society, as the rights that are stripped from them may someday be the rights that are stripped from us. Yes, there may be truly mentally incompetent people that should not vote, but how do we decide? There may be crimes vile enough to strip someone's most fundamental right away, but who decides? What kind of country do we want to be? One where all eligible citizens get to vote, or one where the poorest among us get left out? This will be the focus of our discussion tonight. Right. So, I found some interesting stuff about that I wanted to share with you guys, and I wanted to start with felons. So, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures, NCSL, it has been common practice in the United States to make felons ineligible to vote, in some cases permanently. Over the last few decades, the general trend has been toward reinstating the right to vote at some point, although this is a state-by-state policy choice. Currently, state approaches to felon disenfranchisement vary tremendously. For instance, in the District of Columbia, Maine, and Vermont, felons never lose their right to vote, even when they're incarcerated, which I found really interesting because most places, at least when you're incarcerated, there's no voting. You know?
Yeah.
So that's, you know, however you feel about that one way or the other, it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. When we've talked about this, I've sort of put out there that I'm okay with people in prison not voting.
Right.
And the reason why is because I believe that it would be far too easy to coerce that vote into what you wanted it to be. If you want to talk about voter fraud, here is literally a captive population.
Mm-hmm.
And there are ways of influencing that population. And I would really want that policed very, very closely. And I'd want to see evidence that it is being policed closely within that particular case. But I just putting in my 2 cents on that one.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up because one of the articles I was looking at, this was in reference to people that are mentally incompetent, but I think it can apply to what you just said too, is so we stop the right to vote because other people might manipulate you. And is that fair? Because maybe we should be looking at how to get people to not manipulate them instead of taking their rights away, which is an interesting way to look at it. However,
no, for sure, for sure. The other
Yeah.
argument there being, of course, the social contract and
Right.
people have a criminal mindset, and are they in a rational mindset before rehabilitation? But
right. Like, where are they at? Yeah.
that really in our system, I would argue against that argument. Though I'm bringing it up, but then I would push back against it because. That opens the door to the entire penal system. Is it rehabilitation? Is it punishment? What are we
Right.
doing with these guys? Because if you're going to enter that mental state factor into it that way, I might have a few disagreements with that.
Right.
But I could see the argument being made and it having some validity. But if we're not really rehabilitating people, then what are we doing? So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
All right. So back to this. So in 16 states, felons lose their voting rights only while incarcerated and receive automatic restoration upon release. And then in 21 states, felons lose their voting rights during incarceration and for a period of time after, typically while on parole and or probation. Voting rights are automatically restored after this time period. Former felons may also have to pay any outstanding fines, fees, or restitution before their rights are restored as well, which a lot of, like, I think in Florida and stuff like that, they're kind of fighting against that and saying that's still taking away their right to vote. What if they don't have the money? They just got out of jail, right? In 11 states, felons lose their voting rights indefinitely for some crimes or require a governor's pardon in order for voting rights to be restored. Face an additional waiting period after completion of sentence, including parole and probation, or require additional action before voting rights can be restored. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. So there there's 4 categories that NCL uses to delineate the types of felon voter rights in different states. So those that never lose the right to vote, as we talked about, District of Columbia, Maine, Vermont. Then there's the lost only while incarcerated and restored after, which are like Colorado, Hawaii, Maryland, and a lot of other ones. The ones that are lost until completion of sentence and parole or probation are like Alaska, Connecticut, Georgia, Kansas.
California.
Yeah, California.
Interesting.
Yeah, you'd think that they'd be over here in the...
Never lose the right to vote. Yeah. Yeah, nope.
And then, of course, the states where you lose it, lost until completion of sentence or forever are like a lot of red states. So,
right, you never
big
get
surprise,
it back.
Right? All right. So I wanted to give some perspective about felonies in the United States. So I'll go through. Hopefully, this isn't too long of a list.
We'll be addressing Henny's question here about drug users.
Right. I was just going to get to that. So these are the 20 most common felonies in the United States, just to put it in perspective to think about who's losing their rights. Some of them, you might agree with, and some of them you might be like, no. So drug use, or drug abuse, use of illegal drugs, property crimes like burglary, auto theft, arson, etc., DUIs, assaults, violent crimes like murder, manslaughter, rape, violation of liquor laws, public drunkenness, aggravated assault, burglary, vandalism, fraud, carrying unlicensed deadly weapons, violation of curfew and anti-loitering laws, robbery, domestic violence and child abuse, stolen property violations, motor vehicle theft, and forgery and counterfeiting. So those are the people, that's the 20 most common. So that's probably the most common people that are losing their rights to vote at some point. So gives you something to think about. Because, some of those crimes, like drug use, well, okay, so you use drugs, maybe you had a pound of marijuana on you. Should you really lose your right to vote forever?
Right. And this is one of those questions where you can't really honestly, I can't honestly answer the question because I don't feel like those people on drug offenses should be in prison in the first place. Right. The kind that we're talking about where it's, misdemeanors upgraded to felonies because of 3-strike laws and things like that, where you're really talking about victimless or almost victimless crimes. I'm not talking about the violent offenders, right? People who are, killing people, selling drugs is a different class of person from the guy who's buying marijuana to smoke in the living room, and he gets busted a few too many times, and now he's in jail for 10 years.
Well, and there's even a difference, I would say, between a marijuana dealer and a meth dealer,
for sure.
Who's the bigger criminal there?
Exactly. So the violence question comes into play. Was it a profession or was it a recreational thing? Like the context matters in these things.
Right.
But that's where I have to throw the complicated answer back to Henny and others who are like, well, so should people who are in jail for drug offenses be denied the right to vote? And you go, well,
should they even be in jail? Yeah.
Should they even be in jail is really more my question.
Yeah.
So that's anyway. Kind of have to throw that out there.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what I have about felons.
Yep.
Just some stuff to think about and get some opinions on. The next group of people, as we mentioned earlier, were the homeless. He's going to check if we have calls, I think.
Oh, yeah. No, we're good.
Okay.
No, carry on.
All right.
But I agree that, there is a lot of stuff in that list that's just kind of bullshit as far as I don't agree with any of these states who say, well, after you've done your time, after you've, basically fulfilled your debt to society, which is, another way of putting it if you're going to go social contract view. So if that's the case, then why are you still penalizing them? Why would it be a lifelong thing that a person can't contribute to society when they do come back into society and pay taxes?
Right.
And, have to have a job and et cetera, et cetera. So they should become citizens again in every sense, as far as I can tell. And if they're not ready for that, or we shouldn't be doing that, then we need to review, should they be out of jail then, Anyway. Yeah.
All right. So next is the homeless issue when it comes to voting. So a lot of the problems with homeless, it's not that anyone's saying, oh, you can't vote because you're homeless necessarily, but there's a lot of states that have voter ID laws and address requirements that can prevent them from voting. So technically right now, you don't have to have an address, like a residential address, to vote. You can say you live in the park or a homeless shelter or whatever, but Some states may require you to have a mailing address so they can send you like a ballot or voter IDs cards. So if you don't have that, they won't let you register to vote. Well, what are you supposed to do when you're homeless and you don't have a mailing address? According to findlaw.com, the majority of states in the U.S. require voters to show some kind of identification like a state-issued ID, driver's license, social security card, or a birth certificate before they can register to vote. So when you're homeless, you have no money, how are you going to pay the $20, $25 or whatever it costs in your state to get a driver's license or ID card? You know, when you got to spend that $20 maybe on your medication or something.
It's a problem. It's a problem. It's not one that has an obvious solution. Some of this stuff is not simple Simon stuff to solve. You start getting into the details of this stuff, it gets complicated. But it's still, these are situations that need to be dealt with.
Right. Because these are United States citizens. That's their right, you know?
That's right. And no law of improbability. I don't think that the guy should pay his debt to society and get to keep the money. It's like, can he spend 5 years in prison, you know, commit bank robbery, and then after the 5 years come out and spend his millions, right? And I'm like,
no, not that far. We're not going that far. Yeah, the embezzling guy doesn't get to keep the retirement funds.
Exactly. And I'm only making fun. You guys, the comments are really good this week. I'm really enjoying reading them.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Oh, sure. So with the IDs, some states like Virginia and Georgia do require a picture ID. Other states like Alaska accept non-photo IDs. First-time voters are usually required to show even more documents that provide or prove their eligibility. They may offer some alternatives that allow people to vote without an ID. They vary depending on how strict the state's voter ID laws are. Indiana and Tennessee, for instance, have exemptions for people who are indigent or have religious objections to being photographed, which I always find interesting. I know there's religions that feel that way about photographs, you know, like it'll steal your soul or something. I just never fully understood that.
Wow. Of all the things I would have thought would get in the way of showing an ID, that's not one of them. I did not have that on the list. And I've actually researched this before. That's okay. Cool. Carrie.
Yeah. I found that interesting too.
Wow.
Of course, other issues that get in the way are lack of transportation. You know, maybe the bus doesn't go to the polling location. Maybe you can't afford the bus. You may not have access to resources about voting, like ballot issue mailings, where they send you out the booklets that have all the information about what's going on with the different things that are on the ballot this year.
That's right. I believe by statute, they are required to send these things out. And I was going to make the point, you know, we're talking, you know, sort of barriers to voting right now, but, you know, we read these things.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend, if you are at all in a position to be able to do so, to do so, because you get the arguments for and against, you get more informed, you know, information about what it is you're voting on exactly, its fiscal impacts, policy impacts, things like that. So good to know.
Yeah.
You know, good stuff.
Yeah. So there's a lot of barriers there that we have to figure out how to get over.
Yeah. You know, the Oregon DMV right now is so backed up that they can't get their license, so they can't register.
Jeez.
Yeah. COVID hitting us in
COVID.
Wonderful ways, you know.
Lovely disease.
That's right. See, not all of this necessarily, you know, I'll just sort of say this because I'm me and I say shit like this, but it's not all because of malice or fraud. No. You know, there's a lot of this stuff is logistics problems. It's just people not thinking through unintended consequences of regulations or silly ideas about why, you know, how fraud happens, and we're going to put this measure in to stop it, but it's solving a problem that never actually existed, so it's really just making it worse.
Right.
You know, this is the kind of thing we see. I guess it comes down to that saying of don't attribute to malice what you can, you know, explain with stupidity or ignorance or whatever, and that's a lot of this.
Oh,
there is nefarious deeds afoot here. But it's not all that. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Well, and as far as I can tell, I don't think that there's like a advocacy for the homeless on like certain issues and federal issues and stuff like that. You know, there's not there's not, how there's like NARAL for women's rights, reproductive rights and stuff like that. There's not a group like that for the homeless that just deals with that I know of. I mean, maybe there is, but I've never heard of it. So that's a big problem. They need more advocacy, but people often forget about them and they're just like whatever about them.
Yeah, no, it's a thing.
Yeah. So because of all these barriers, only 1 in 10 homeless people vote on average. That's not enough, man. They need to be coming to the polls because they have issues too that are important. We have to work on how to decrease our homeless population, and I think the homeless probably understand how to do that, on some level,
Yeah, we're talking about 500,000 people, at least according to latest census data. So yeah, so it's a significant number of people. 500,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we have a call.
Yeah, we got a call coming in here. Let's see, Stanley, I think. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Hey, what's up?
Hey, Chris. This is Stanley. I'm doing great, Chris. It's great to hear you. Your stream is very enjoyable. I always like calling in and chiming in. I heard your wife mention about how I was homeless for 4 years, and I'm currently on SSI right now. And just to set the record straight, the homeless do have advocates. The problem is the advocates have to go through the environmentalists. They have to go through the local, like the place where they're homeless at. They have to deal with that local jurisdiction, the politicians and the citizenry. And so, and then I can't remember, there's like a third thing. The third thing is the individual, the resources available. Each place has their own rules of how they do stuff. And I don't know if you're familiar with the John and Ken radio show, but they talk about the homeless crisis in LA County and how they keep trying to, they can find ways to give them homes, but it's either the environmentalists will like block it, or the people that live in the area will block it, or something. It's always somebody blocking it, so they can never give them the housing, even though they can give them the housing. And then the way they could get around that is if the local government asks the federal government to do it, but they won't ask the federal government to do it.
Right. Sort of a situation of, yes, we're all very compassionate and we all care very much, but please solve it somewhere else.
Yeah, not in my neighborhood.
Yes, basically. And everybody's saying that.
Right.
It's like every time they try to go to someone, that's what's being done, basically.
Yeah.
It's like, so nobody will like just take the responsibility and do what's got to be done. Nobody wants to do it.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to add that to the show, but I was just listening and enjoying what you guys were saying. And
Thank you. No, I appreciate the input.
Yeah.
That's valuable,
know,
firsthand information there. And thanks for calling in, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
All right. It's just now I realize we need to check before we continue.
7.
Let's check back in with 7. Otherwise, we might be missing out on some opportunities there. There he is. He is still there.
Just being a fluff.
Just sitting on the couch, being a little fluff monster.
Oh. He's actually awake at least this time.
Yeah, I know. He's kind of eyeballing the camera too. It's a little unusual for him. Maybe he's getting more used to it as we keep filming him. All right. Back to the let me address a question that was asked and get your input on this too.
Okay.
Internet voting.
I have mixed feelings about it because on the one hand, I'm like, yeah, then everybody has access to it. You can just vote on your phone, you don't even have to go anywhere. And then the other part of me is like, oh, that would be so easy to hack.
Yeah.
Like, you could, the thing is no matter what security protocols people put into place for websites and things like that, there's always some guy that figures out how to hack it. Or some government that figures out how to hack it, Right. And I think that's what scares me about internet voting is, well, what happens when China or Russia or somebody figures out how to hack that?
Yes, that is one of many concerns I have about internet voting. I would not support it at all. I think that the tradition of voting is that you show up. You go, you do the process, you make your voice be heard, and you don't do that, silently from a basement. You go out there and do it. And we have mail-in now, which is great because not everybody can physically go out and do it, but there's still a physical action there. And I don't know, I think that's kind of important to it. But more importantly, like you said, it's the wild, wild west on the internet. This is not well-regulated territory where we've got full control of this at all. Not even remotely is the internet a secure platform for something as important as that.
Right.
So, no, we're not down with that. And then there was another question about, have we had any indications here in Colorado or Denver of voter fraud or voter influence or anything like that?
Not so far that I've heard. Have you heard anything?
No, I haven't.
You have to look that up a little more.
Yeah, there might be some, I would not put it past some Coloradans in certain areas that there might be some of that voter intimidation going on, which is again a rough one because, open carry states or whatever, you got the right, you show up, you're standing there, like it's kind of weird. But you have the right to do it, but then it's kind of intimidating.
Yeah.
I mean, I just my head spins on this crap. It seems very unnecessary to me that people are showing up at polling places with guns. I don't get that. I don't understand that.
They're saying that, oh my God, the fringe left is going to do crazy things. And I'm like, they are.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to be thought police, but I think some people had definitely got a little bit too much time, a little bit too much beer, and a little bit too much conspiracy theory on their minds.
Yeah.
It's not, if you go diving into this stuff, the problems with our system the big problems with our system do not exist at that level, but we keep getting the blame for it by people who are kind of screwing us. And I really, if there was one point I wanted to make tonight about this, it's that we need to own and push back as voters against that crap because we have the right to vote. We need to exercise that right. We need to be loud and proud about it. And you don't need to be loud and proud about who you're voting for. It's nobody's business.
Right.
This thing of in modern society where everybody knows how everybody else votes. I mean, it's okay for it to be secret, but do it. It's the only power we've got.
Right.
So, and the law of improbability was commenting on this earlier. You know what I mean? And this is my view on voting is I'm very, very strong proponent of it. So getting those words in there, yeah, I get your point, Robert Roberts, but at the same time, Americans can and should complain about foreign influence in their elections because it's real, it exists, and it is a very well-funded and very well-organized operation on the part of other governments as well as other groups. So it is a valid concern, and it is something that we should be paying attention to.
Yeah, it can't be taken lightly.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we have done, he's right. We've done it in other countries ourselves, but that doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, and let's be clear that I don't have evidence, and I have counter evidence to the claim that we've done it the same as Russia and China. It's easy to say, really hard to prove. So, okay. Anyway, moving along. She has more points to make. Right. I want her to make them here.
All right. So finally, we're going to talk about how deeming someone mentally incompetent can lead to their loss of the right to vote, which is an interesting one. So according to Pew, laws in 39 states and Washington, D.C. allow judges to strip voting rights from people with mental disorders ranging from schizophrenia to Down syndrome who are deemed incapacitated or incompetent. Some of these states use archaic language like idiots or insane persons in their statutes. Still. They're still using that language today. There is no agreed upon definition for what constitutes a mentally incompetent person. There are no federal guidelines saying what qualities one must possess to be deemed too incompetent to vote. Maybe it makes sense to limit the voting rights of someone severely affected by dementia or in the throes of a schizophrenic episode. Or does it? Where do we draw the line? There have been autistic people and people with Down syndrome that have had this right stripped away. Is that fair? some judges will relieve anyone under guardianship of their right to vote. So just because someone's got to be your guardian, does that mean you're incompetent enough that you shouldn't be able to vote? Like, where's that line again? And some places say you must be able to either communicate your desire to vote or show you understand what voting means before you can have that right to vote if you're incompetent, which, you can kind of see. But then at the same time, it's like, well, like,
I think the thing is that in theory it sounds good, and in practice you usually find people are messing it up, and that's the hard part about some of this is
how do you measure?
Great idea. Sounds easy. Right. We have some calls in the queue.
Oh, good.
So I think we should take some of those. Right. Here is our first one. Hello. You're on.
Hi, Chris. This is Liz.
Hey, Liz. Welcome to the show.
How you doing?
We are good.
Yeah.
Hey.
What's up this evening? What would you like to tell us and talk about?
Well, I found myself in this kind of through no, doing of myself, but I find myself in this state where I don't have to worry about paying the rent or getting a job and it made me think a lot about the folks that have to worry about all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter works in a district court office in Pennsylvania, and they were holding up all of the evictions. And as soon as they let them go, like all of these evictions are going to be let loose, and these people are just going to be tossed out. And, people just want to ignore them. They just want to say they're not there.
Yep.
The same thing with mentally ill. We just want to like shove them off to the side.
That's right. Yeah, it's like I was saying, it's sort of everybody kind of cares or say they care, but then when it comes to actually doing something about it, not in my neighborhood.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I realize that, landlords need to make money, but people need homes.
That's
and, you can't have them all out on the street.
That's
and
yeah. Our government
it's
wanted
just
to do the
frightening.
right thing. They'd give the landlords assistance so the landlords could assist the tenants.
Yeah. Well, we have seen here in Colorado, in Denver at least, with the COVID-19 response, that the money and the resources and the logistics work can be done and can be made to work when there is a will to do it. And there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of people who are willing to throw money at this problem and have. But,
Pennsylvania did very well too.
Yep, exactly. So I think raising awareness, calling people out on it a little bit. I know you don't want to run a whole campaign on shame, but you definitely want to get people's heads up that, these folks need help. They don't need ridicule, and they don't need hate, and they don't need, to be teased and tormented and antagonized,
Today I watched, I think it was done today. They brought in the entire Senate Judiciary Committee, and they all sat and talked, and both sides, just to like see where each other stood. And I can't remember which state he was from, but he was saying, why are we hashing this out about a judge when we have people dying?
Right.
We're hashing this out about a judge when we have people sick, we have people homeless.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Why are we? Because you want to push them off to the side, so you're going to push this judge thing up front, so you can push those homeless people off to the side, because that's what you do.
Yeah, exactly. And in this case, with what you're talking about, not just the homeless, but literally everybody, because of the situation with COVID,
Right.
They're not voting on relief bills right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of nonsense.
Exactly,
going on with
and that's
stuff.
what he said. He
That's
said,
right.
the new guy from Louisiana said, I will go in there tomorrow with you guys. I will go in. He's a Republican. He says, I will go in with my Democratic friend tomorrow, and we will start tomorrow. He says, I know that's going to piss people off. I don't care. He said, this is important.
That's right.
And that's the Republicans saying this is important.
Hey, man, I don't care who's saying, who's talking sense as long as they're talking sense.
Exactly. I don't care who's saying it's important.
Exactly.
He's making
At this
sense.
point, I'll take anybody. I mean, exactly.
He's making sense.
That's right. Well, thanks, Liz.
Because
Thanks for that call.
All right.
Yeah, good point.
Well, thank you, Chris. Your show is awesome. I watch you all the time.
Thank you.
I think they're incredible.
Awesome.
So,
I think
and
you're
good luck in
incredible
school.
too.
And give Seven a pet for me.
Will do.
My cat is all orange. I see. Seven is like white and orange.
That's right.
Seven's gorgeous. All right, Chris.
Awesome.
You
Thank
and
you.
Melissa have a great night. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
All right.
you.
Bye-bye.
All right. And let us now talk with Lauren, who's been waiting for a bit here. Lauren, are you there?
Hey, Chris.
Hey.
It's me. It's Lauren, your friend from Phoenix.
Oh, hey. What's up?
I wanted to drop in just real quick since we're talking about voting rights. And I just wanted to tell everybody a little experience that I learned about my county this year, and specifically when it comes to voting in the primary. Now, I've always been registered as an independent, as I thought any good critical thinker should be.
Exactly. Exactly.
And what I learned this year, I've also become somewhat of a follower of local politics, which would be like our mayor, our city council, and, those things that are going on, because those things are very important, even though most people don't watch them.
That's right.
Now, what I learned this year in my county, which is Maricopa County, is that if you're registered as an independent, you can be on the permanent early voting list. You can have voted in previous years, but you will not be invited to vote in the primaries. Wow. You won't even get a postcard that they're happening. You have to seek that out.
Wow.
Which was crazy to me.
I know. It's this kind of crap. I'm telling you, it's all these little things. If you were to sweep through all the states and round up all this stuff, Yeah,
you'd probably find a lot of stuff.
I mean, we can't vote in primaries
no,
here.
We can.
No, we used to not be able to.
Right,
though,
but
here in
recently
Colorado,
they passed that law that you can.
Yeah, we had that same problem here. Ugh.
Well, as an independent, I don't vote for the partisan things, but I wanted to vote on the local issues, especially because that can mean, a field of 5 for, let's say, mayor. It's going to get whittled down to 2. If you were an independent and you were waiting for that postcard to come in the mail, it's not coming.
Yeah. Yep.
I've also been my eyes have been opened this year too. If you're registered to a party, how much different the treatment is, because they know who you are, they know where you live, and your party wants to reach you, invite you to debates with your local candidates. I had no idea all this other stuff was going on because I've been over, registered as an independent this whole time.
Right. Yeah, no, there's a lot.
They're having fun without us.
Yeah. Yeah, I was registered as a Democrat in previous elections and have been getting texts from Democrat groups about my vote, and they are constantly trying to survey me via text for how I'm going to vote on this amendment or this proposition or something. Right. Yeah, there's a lot.
And they want to make sure you show up, so they're not going to let you not know about the primary, or you're going to be notified. And for us independents, I mean, the primary has come and gone this year, but I would just recommend anyone that is registered as an independent, make sure you know what those dates are when they come around.
That's right. That's right. This is all part of being in the process and being aware of what's going on. And I wish it wasn't
gerrymandering, because I might foam the mouth.
I know, right? I mean, I wish it wasn't such a burden on us, right? I mean, we get a lot of good stuff from our government in terms of, the things they're required to give us. But God, they just make it so hard sometimes. Ugh.
And it almost feels intentionally so, and no one will cop to that, but it does feel intentionally complicated.
Yes. And in some cases where it is that way, it is intentional. No question about it.
Like, it would be nice. I agree that it would be nice if as soon as you turned 18, you were registered to vote. Like, there's just no question about it.
Right. Yeah, I don't see why. Well, anyway, there's a lot of things I don't see, but whatever. Lauren,
thank you guys so much. I'm going to keep watching. Stay critical.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. Thanks for calling in. All
Okay,
right.
bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, good. And we have Adria. Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you this
Hi, Chris.
evening?
Hi, Melissa. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good.
Good.
What's up?
Good. Well, I was listening to the 4 groups of people you pointed out that have difficulty voting. And I have another group that you might not know about, but I found out because it happened to my mom.
Oh.
And that is if you are admitted to the hospital, like right around election time, you know, a day before or 2 days before, and you're stuck in the hospital and cannot go to a polling station to vote, and it's too late to get a mail-in ballot, what do you do?
Huh.
Well, I found out. Some hospitals, usually in large cities such as Philadelphia, my mom lives outside of Philadelphia, but in Philadelphia, if you're in like a main hospital in Philadelphia, there are poll workers who can come to your bedside so you can vote. Now, that's not the same for smaller hospitals. And my mom was in a hospital outside of the city proper. And it took 6 people working together so my mom could cast her vote that year.
Wow.
Wow.
And I'm 3,000 miles away from my mom. And I can't, I called so many people, and basically 6 strangers had to work together to help my mom because it had to go to, so this guy had to call the guy who was head of some voting. No, he was head of some Democratic place. What are they called? They're campaign workers. So this campaign worker had to contact another campaign worker since my mom was registered with the Democratic Party. So he contacted another campaign worker in her local area who then had to drive to the hospital and meet with the doctor and mom and get the doctor to sign off on the fact that mom is indeed hospitalized and is mentally capable of voting. She had a physical, not a mental problem.
Right.
And then that had to be taken to a judge in Doylestown, which was quite a drive, and then had to be taken back to, I think, Philadelphia or something so they could get a paper ballot so my mom could fill it out and have it countersigned by the doctor again, I think, or something like that, and then have it handed in and it be a legal ballot.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's
now, in a way,
a whole other kettle of fish.
Well, exactly. Now, in a way, that demonstrates 2 things. One, you fantastic on jumping through all those hoops and making it happen. But it also speaks a little bit to how many hoops have been put in place to prevent fraud that everybody is so convinced is happening right now. Right? If voter fraud is so easy, then, you know, it should have been easy for you to just go and sign her name or some nonsense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just to make the
Absolutely,
point.
But no, it was so hard.
Yes.
And the other point I would like to add to those 2 points you made is there needs to be a uniform provision across all hospitals.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
let's say you have a compound fracture or whatever, and you have to be admitted because, you know, you need surgery or whatever. Right around election time, there needs to be across all hospitals a provision for everyone to be able to vote.
Yep, I agree with that. I think that a hospital could easily organize that and make that happen. And I think you're absolutely right about that. Very good point.
Sure, they could have a little mini polling place there that's just for the hospital residents or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not. It would be. It's very doable to resolve that within the system we have. We just need people to care enough to do it. Well, thank you for that. Good point.
It's very interesting stuff.
You're welcome. I thought that might be a people group you would not have heard about.
Yeah.
Very definitely. No, good point. All right. Talk to you later.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. All right, guys. So, did you have any final points to make?
I think I made all the points. Yeah, the only last little bit I had was just some questions for people calling in, but
Yeah.
they pretty much talked about them and everything already.
Yeah, we covered a lot of stuff here. And again, you guys, some of these comments have just been awesome. Thank you very much for your contributions to this. Interesting. Well, I'm glad that Jackie Lacey's not getting the endorsement from Garcetti. Okay. Okay. So let's wrap up this show this week. Let's check back in one more time with 7, because we would be remiss if we did not. There he is. Looks the same as last time, but actually isn't. He just sits there
moved his head
for hours sometimes. He'll just kick it there. All right. So that's our little fluff monster. All right. Good. So, with that, I think we will be wrapping up. We have a podcast tomorrow coming out that I think you guys are going to be more than a little interested in. Has to do with internet cults, or what the person I'm interviewing is calling hashtag cults. So that was a pretty interesting discussion we had, and that'll be going up tomorrow, and then we'll have our usual critical Q&A on Sunday, okay? And then I'll be working during the week on my schooling again. It is time-consuming. And as far as, there was a question at the top of the show that I failed to get to. I talked about my studies and some of the emotional difficulties of it, but somebody asked me about whether I was applying Scientology study tech and looking up words and demo kits and stuff. And no, of course I'm not doing that. But I will say this. I actually noticed this about how I study, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. This isn't some Scientology thing, but I am studying stuff that some of it is above my head, right? In terms of some of the research methods, stats, as I was going over last week. I can't proceed on those subjects until I have the basics cleared up. I can't just listen to information that doesn't apply in any way to my life or to real life or to what I'm going to be doing in some theoretical sense. I have a hard time doing that for very long. And I also can't go past words or concepts that I don't get. So if somebody says something and it sounds important and I don't understand it, I'm not going to just blow it off or try to figure it out. I'll stop the lecture and I'll go look it up and figure out what's what. But that's not the same thing as what goes on in Scientology by any stretch of the imagination. So anyway, I just wanted to answer that question since somebody asked about it. So, all right, guys. So thank you very much for your participation in the calls and everything. This was a great show this week. We will continue this on Fridays. And so we will see you for this show live next Friday. All right, guys. Sorry, Couch. You got here just in the nick of time. All right. Yeah, let's wrap it up.
All right.